Over 20 years, I've discovered that the key reason that students don't get the score that they need in the reading test is not because they're bad at reading. It is often they're just following the wrong advice. And if you follow the wrong advice, you're going to get a much lower score. So what we're going to cover today is the big myths, common advice that students believe about the test that doesn't actually work. Then we'll look at the real difference, what really separates out the people who struggle with the IELTS test to the people that easily get a band 7, 8, or 9. And then we'll look at step-by-step strategies that you can use to apply to all the different types of questions on test day. So the biggest myth about IELTS reading and IELTS in general is just practice more. All you have to do is just practice and you will magically get the score that you need. Let's look at why that is wrong, because many of you watching might completely disagree with that. So I want to tell you about two of my friends, Johnny and Emma. Johnny is a farmer. His dad was a farmer. He grew up on a farm. His dad had an old car. And since Johnny was like 9 years old, Johnny has been illegally driving his dad's car around his farm. And then we have Emma. Emma is my other friend, and she never touched the steering wheel of a car. She never learned how to drive until she was 18, and she got a driving instructor to tell her exactly what to do. Who do you think failed their test and who do you think passed their test? Johnny with 10 years, a decade of driving experience, or Emma with 6 weeks of driving experience? You've guessed it. Johnny failed multiple times and Emma passed first time. Why was that? Even though Johnny had hundreds, even thousands of hours of practice. Well, Johnny had never been taught how to drive properly. He had been driving incorrectly, practicing the wrong thing, ingraining those bad habits for years and years and years. This is exactly the same with many, many students. They go onto YouTube, they get some tips and tricks that don't actually work. They practice using those tips and tricks, and their reading skills get worse, not better. The second big myth that I see, very, very common advice, is all you need are time management tips, and this is magically going to improve your score. This is completely wrong. Why? So you'll probably recognize this guy, Usain Bolt. He was the fastest man in the world. Remember when Usain Bolt won the gold at the Olympics? The night before, did he go on to Google and Google time management tips? No. Why did he win gold? Because he was better at running than all these other guys. These other guys weren't bad at time management. They were worse at running. He was the best runner, therefore he finished the race in the fastest time. This is exactly the same with the IELTS reading test. I did the test, the real test, and I got band 9 in reading, of course, because I'm a native English speaker. Of course, I should get a band 9. But I did it in 20 minutes. How did I do it in 20 minutes? Through time management techniques? No, I'm just really, really good at reading in English. So you don't have a time management problem. You have a reading skills problem. You need to address the actual problem and fix the problem that you actually have in order to improve. The third big myth that I see is skimming and scanning. When I got a new class, when I used to teach 16 students in the classroom, first question I asked at the start of the first reading class, I would say, what's the key to getting a high score? Hands would go up. It would always say skimming and scanning. And then I would give them a practice question and say, okay, just skim and scan and find the correct answer. None of them were able to do that. Why did you think that was the correct answer? Well, that's what everybody says. Well, what everybody says is not necessarily the thing that you should be doing. The average reading score worldwide is a band 6. If the common advice was correct, the average score would be much, much higher than a band 6. So many of you might disagree, so let me demonstrate this to you. I want you to imagine that we are in a helicopter and we're flying over New York. And I say to you, your task is to find McDonald's in Times Square. So we're flying over Manhattan here. Here's Lower Manhattan. We have New Jersey out here. We have Queens. We have Brooklyn. We have different areas. Skimming is just getting a general idea of where you are. It is giving you a general idea of what the reading text actually means. So we're flying over here. We have a general idea that we are in the correct place. But can you see McDonald's? No, we are too far up. So skimming helps, but it doesn't help you find the correct answer. We land the helicopter. You still have the task of finding McDonald's in Times Square. Scanning, does that help you find the correct answer? Well, scanning helps you find the general location, the correct paragraph, the correct area. It doesn't actually help you find the correct answer. So if we look here, we know we're generally in Times Square. Okay, this looks like Times Square, but where's McDonald's? Scanning just tells you you're in the right area. You're getting warmer. Close reading is the skill that actually gets you the correct answer. And it's one that is very, very rarely taught in most IELTS classrooms. And if you didn't use that skill, you would just be flying around New York or flying around America, not really knowing what to do. That's what most students do on test day. They're just looking at stuff and not really knowing where the correct answer is. And most classrooms will only teach you 2 reading skills. They'll teach you skimming and they'll teach you scanning. We actually teach 5. So number 1, understand the question. Simply, if you do not understand the question type, what it is telling you, the instructions, you will never be able to answer it correctly. We do teach skimming, we do teach scanning, then close reading. Carefully analyzing the text, carefully thinking about it once you have found the area that you're looking for. And then very, very importantly, but often overlooked, is deciding the correct answer. So you might have, okay, could be this or it could be that, multiple choice, for example, or true, false, not given. We need to logically think through and use a system for finding the correct answer. Okay, so what you might be thinking now is, you said system, you said strategy, just teach me one system and I can go in and magically get a band 9. I wish that were true. If it were true, my life would be much easier and I would give it to you. But unfortunately, or I think fortunately, there are different question types and they are testing different things. And we have step-by-step strategies for all of those different question types. I'm going to give them to you. It's actually in this ebook that you can download. You can go to the description and we give you the full ebook that has every single question and every single step-by-step strategy. We normally only give that to our VIP students, but you can get it for free today. But let's look at why this is really, really important, because some of you might download that ebook and skim through it and not really understand what you need to do. Let me explain the why you need different strategies for different question types. So I want you to imagine that we are in New York. I say to you, you're going to go to Las Vegas and I am going to go to Seattle. Would we travel along the exact same route? Would we use the same strategy to get there? Of course not. But that's exactly what many IELTS students do. So there are different question types that require different strategies, but they're all following the same route and they end up getting very, very different answers. So just like New York, Seattle, Las Vegas are very, very different places, here are 3 different question types. And I want to show you how different these are. So matching headings, what it is asking you to do with the matching headings question is understand the main ideas and the paragraph. So to look at paragraphs and understand the general meaning of each paragraph. True, false, not given, what it is testing is something completely different. It's actually the opposite. What they're testing is, can you closely read things within that paragraph and then logically analyze the different question options. And then multiple choice is careful comparison between different things, but also the elimination of different distractors, really focusing in on what the question is actually asking you and what the correct answer might be. 3 completely different questions requiring 3 completely different strategies. So let's look at the strategy for matching headings contained within this ebook. So what skills are being tested here? Understanding the main idea, quickly understanding the general meaning, and differentiating between 2 or more similar headings. So the common problems are there's a lot of information to process. It takes quite a lot of time if you try and understand every single word. There are a few other little problems, but that's the main one. So let me show you a strategy that we've developed for matching headings that helps you overcome all of these problems. So what I want you to do is ignore all of this. I want you just to focus in on this paragraph, paragraph D. So what we're not going to do is we're not going to look at the headings. So most people will first look at the headings. They'll kind of get lost or they'll read every single word and waste a lot of time. What I want you to do is just focus in on D, and I want you to create a title. So if you had to write a title for this, what would it be? So pause the video, read this, and create your own title, and I'll do the same. So what I'm going to put here for my title is kind of something like a large proportion of world population affected by water problems. So it might not say that in the actual headings. It might be something different, but large, big, proportion, number, population, people are afflicted by these issues. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at the list of headings and I'm going to see, are there any that are similar to this? So finance, no. Benefit, no. No. Customers, no. It's not talking about customers. What makes the device different? No. Cleaning water from a range of sources? No. Overcoming production difficulties? No. Profit, not the primary goal? No. A warm welcome for the device? No. This is not looking good. The number of people affected by water shortages? None of these match this. This one, 10, at the bottom, is the correct answer. So 17D, we're going to put 10. Let's check the correct answer. As you can see, 17X, correct answer. How easy was that? That took 30 seconds. And you were able to immediately find the correct answer using the strategy that we teach. That's the exact same strategy as is included in the ebook. But even students who download the PDF, learn all of the strategies, some of them still have issues. Well, what we discovered is that the IELTS reading test is not actually a reading test. It's something different. I'll show you what it is here. The title will kind of give it away. The reading test is not a reading test. Why? Well, have a look here. These are real question words and real words in the text from real tests that actually happened. So here in the question, it talked about civil calendar, but in the text, it talked about municipal calendar. Months were in equal length, 12 months of 30 days. Divided the day into 2 equal halves, split the day into 12-hour periods. 2 equal halves of a day, 12-hour periods. You're probably starting to see that the reading test is not just a reading test. It is a vocabulary test. It is a synonyms test. Civil and municipal, equal length, 30 days within a month. These are all synonyms or paraphrasing. If you do not understand the meaning of these words, you will not be able to find the correct answer. Therefore, what we do is we help our students improve their vocabulary. And the beauty of this strategy is if you improve your vocabulary, you improve not just your reading score, but your listening score and your speaking score and your writing score all at the same time. Because vocabulary is one of those foundation systems that improves everything. But like everything, the IELTS test, there's a right way and a wrong way to improve your vocabulary. The wrong way to improve your vocabulary is to do things like this. Memorizing word lists, they just go in one ear and out the other. Using flashcards with no context doesn't really help you remember anything if there's no context around it, because you'll just forget everything quickly. And flashcards and memorizing long lists just leads to demotivation. People can do it for 10 minutes, they can't do it for 10 weeks. So what we discovered was a far more effective way. It's our vocabulary improvement plan. There's scientific research out there that suggests that the maximum number of words that human beings in any language can learn in one day is between about 8 to 12. Once you start going past 12 new words, your brain kind of fills up and you need a little bit of rest, and the next 24-hour period you can fill that up a little bit more. What that means is you need to learn vocabulary over a long period of time, weeks and months. How do we get students to do that? By reading and learning what they love. My little boy loves Japanese manga. I would get him to read that. My wife loves cooking, so I would get her to read cookbooks. And what that forces you to do is learn words within context. When we see a word that we don't understand, we underline it, we look at the other words around it, and we guess the meaning based on that. That's exactly the same way babies and children learn the English language. Again, everything is based on real research of what actually works within language acquisition. And that means that you retain the vocabulary, you actually remember it. Because if my little boy is, and this is how I actually teach him, I get him to read about manga and find new words and find vocabulary. I get him to write essays about that thing because he is going to retain all of this information and he's going to naturally do it without even knowing about it. And then he looks forward to actually practicing. So here's the vocabulary improvement plan. You can download this, but You can look through it step by step. It is pretty great. We love it and our students love it. And the most important thing is get a little notebook and just add new stuff to it every day. And within weeks, within months, you have a full notebook full of new words, and it makes everything much, much easier. So now you're more comfortable with everything to do with IELTS reading. Let's move on to speaking.